Takole, spoštovani udeleženci,
Dear participants, we are back
v našem drugem delu programa.
in the second part of our program. We will continue with the lecture of Ms. Maša Blaznik from Telefon, the hotline Tom.
Med nami je že gospa.
I would like to welcome Ms. Maša. Let me say that she is
Naša naslednja sogovornica, Maša Blaznik.
that our next speaker is a university-educated psychologist. She's active in the Tom hotline, and her professional activities are focused on work with young people. She started in the Tom hotline, and now she is the head of the Tom Ljubljana counseling team and also the associate of the Center for Safer Internet. She will focus on the crisis of young people and adolescents and children during the COVID-19 epidemic. Thank you very much, Tanya. I can hear you well, yes. And also I can see you well. All right, I will focus on the impact of the epidemic on the crisis, distress of young people and children, especially what we at Tom Hotline received from their side. I will present our team. What do we do? So the Tom Hotline is a hotline. We are offering phone call counseling, chat and email counseling. We have volunteer counselors, 134 volunteers in the network currently, and they are part of 9 counseling groups across the whole country. We celebrated our 30th years of activity last year. We have a long tradition, and we wish that every generation is familiar with the Tom Hotline, that they can turn to us in any time period of distress. To illustrate the changes during the epidemic, I will try to illustrate the topics before the epidemic that children and young people had. So before the epidemic, for 30 years, we have been collecting these statistics, and the topics were similar. They were linked to adolescence, to growing up, and the most powerful category were the peers. This is a logical continuation element of the growing up. So the questions regarding relationships, how to find a true friend, what to do if I'm a loner, if I don't have many friends, how to solve bullying, peer violence, then topics regarding sexuality, pregnancy, contraception, periods, topics related to family, dysfunctional family relationships, addictions, alcoholism, school-related topics, how to continue your studies, or which type of high school to choose in the transition from the primary school to the secondary education, what to do if I get an F, so a negative grade. These were all topics before the Corona times. We also had questions regarding the internet, the use of internet. Our most numerous age group was 13 to 15. And then in 2020, we faced the corona crisis that impacted our lives, the lives of the adults, the lives of the children and young people. We had homeschooling. We faced the change in our habits and also the changes in the topics that the young people called us about, contacted us. So the start of the epidemic and later on had an enormous impact on our statistics. We've prepared the contents for 2020 and for the first half of the 21. Let us focus on the 2020 first. A few technical things. Did you have more contacts, more calls during the start of the corona epidemic? We actually recorded a decrease in phone calls. You can see the beginning and then the second part of the year in May and June, when the children return to school, the contacts have risen again. And we linked this to several facts. As a hotline for children, we have testing calls. Children are teasing each other. They are, it's part of their relationships. And you can see the blue line, which are silent calls, testing calls, how it declined in the third and fourth month of the year. So the children who would call, who would make the silent calls when they were socializing with their peers, and due to the epidemic, because they were homeschooling, those kind of calls declined. Later during the summer, this fall was recorded again, and then during the second lockdown, an increase, a decrease, I'm sorry. Now the orange line shows that the counseling calls remained and they were longer in terms of the duration. And the gray line was e-counseling, so contacts through the chat room and emails. For these channels, we recorded a 9% increase during the pandemic, and this was the main focus. The children were using such counseling, so email counseling, the most during the pandemic. The age of callers. So I said before, our most numerous age group was 13 to 15 years of age. And you can see in the chart that it was still the most present age group, but the number of people calling in the age group 16 to 18 and 19 and more was increasing throughout the epidemic. So 19 and older, this age group was left alone, was left without any support. And these young people started to turn to us, calling us, and I think it's quite important to stress this, and we are still seeing this increase. And this age group has been on the increase. Now the topics during the epidemic, the content, the topics, the questions have changed dramatically. The topics I mentioned before were in the background, but in the focus was violence in the family, mental issues, mental health. As you can see on the third column, and before the epidemic, it was in place 6, and suicidal thinking, mentality. These are the categories where we recorded the most increase in the contacts. In terms of mental health, the young people wanted to talk about anxiety, depression, feeling lonely, self-injury. Children had that issues before the epidemic, but also a group of children who had not had such problems appeared. The young people who were not professionally treated because of self-injury, for example, turned to us, and we had to offer advice how to calm themselves, soothe themselves, and how to turn to an expert, a counseling expert advice. And another chart showing the topics between 2015 and 2020. You can see the difference. For example, the green column shows 2020, where you can see how the topics change. The internet, the topic of internet has about 3 to 4% of contacts, and it was on the increase during the epidemic. Another chart showing the mental health category. You can see the mental health content issues that were shown during the lockdown from March to May and October to December. The orange columns for 2020, and you can see depression, self-image on the increase, fear, loneliness, self-harm, mental disorders. Young people needed help, especially in these fields. The next category, the suicide. In the Slovenian environment, this topic is present. We have 3 categories. So considering planning suicide and has already attempted suicide. You can see the increase in 2020, a tremendous increase. Young people, children considering planning and have already attempted suicide. These statistics is horrifying, shocking. And to move aside from the numbers, figures, I prepared the content of the first 10 emails during the second lockdown in Slovenia. The first email, the child was writing about depression. The second email, a suicidal friend, safe internet settings, a parent in a mental health crisis, adolescent problems, eating disorders, fake TikTok profile, peer violence, pregnancy. So 10 emails, and you can see it is a representative pattern, sample of the topics that were repeated throughout the epidemic. We have also recorded that young people find it hard to talk about their problems, find it hard to find assistance, help, advice. And you can only imagine how hard it is for adults, but even harder for the children. People who call us tell us that 43% of people who called us said that they have not confided to anybody before calling to our hotline. This is an important fact. They deal with these issues alone. They dwell on these problems, try to find solutions themselves, and young people coming from dysfunctional families feel they need to address their issues alone, and it is very hard for them to confide into others. They have issues, they face issues of feeling ashamed, fear. They believe that other people don't care about them and so on. They do not know the network of experts. They find it hard to make contact with an expert. And also, they say they are worried that the information they're going to share with somebody will be spread in the local environment, that people who live close will know about their problems. If we want to make concrete illustration of the charts I have shown you, I have collected 3 examples, 3 emails. The cases are anonymous and the content is as follows. I will read it to you. I have depression and anxiety. I cut myself. I have problems with eating and with my self-image. I already have medication, antidepressants and antipsychotics. I've already found out about lethal amounts. I'm not well. At the same time, I have to be a psychologist for my friends. I'm always there for them, but there's nobody to listen to my problems. I need help. Next example, my mom and dad are fighting all the time. Once there was a police at our home. I'm desperate. My dad's saying mean things. I can't take it anymore. They fight all the time and I'm at my wit's end. Please help me. My dad is thinking about suicide. And the last example, with every lockdown, I have less and less hope of getting out of this quarantine alive. I can't do it anymore because it's killing me inside. I don't have the will to do anything. Sometimes it's hard to get ready to brush my teeth and not lie in bed all day. I don't have the energy for anything else. Everything that used to make me happy is now miserable for me. One day I jump out of joy and the next day I can't do anything. Help me. Such issues, such content that we recorded in 2020 remain here with us in 2021. Not only remain, but have increased in 2021. As you can see in the chart, the orange columns show the year 2021. So the topics such as family, problems within a family, mental health issues, suicide, still on the increase. In 2021, we have other topics, the topic of peers, and we have linked this to the fact that the children are back to schools, a lot of peer bullying, peer violence, and all of the crisis issues from 2020 have just been unresolved. We returned to schools, but those issues were not resolved, and I would like to join Mr. Tekavets that it will take a long time to tackle all of the issues that have compiled during the epidemic. Most contacts in terms of the issue of family deal with the relationship with parents and mental health issues, depression, self-injury, anxiety, and similar. We've experienced a year and a half of this kind of period during the epidemic. And if you look at the average of the last 5 years, mental health category represented 8.5% in 2021. In the first semester of the year 2021, the mental health category accounts for 16.6% of all categories. This category of suicide is horrifying. The average of the 5 years, every 50th call was linked to suicidal thinking. And in 2020, every 30th call was linked to suicide. In the first semester of 2021, every 15th contact call is linked to suicidal thoughts, thinking about planning suicide. Don't be scared of all these charts and tables. I just want to illustrate the differences in terms of counseling, calls, contacts that we have in the field of phone calls and emails. As I mentioned before, the telephone calls are on the decrease and emails are on the increase. The age group 16 to 18, the phone calls have increased, as you can see. And the most present topic are the peers. So people who call, share this information, they can talk about this relationship issues with their peers. And if we look at the topics from the email and chat room, you can see that the topics are linked to family, mental health, suicide. If we talk about the emails, and in chat rooms, mental health, family, love issues. Age groups in the email category and chat rooms, there is an increase in the age group 19 and more. So through e-channels, young people and children turn to us in terms of the most severe problems. This is a precious element of these channels. They remain anonymous, they can ask questions, they can confide themselves into somebody for the first time, many times. And these are the most severe topics such as mental health, self-injury, depression, suicide, and other difficult topics linked to family relationships within the families. When we talk to young people, they tell us that they do not want or they cannot talk live in person to somebody else, and they expect if they write as often as possible, if they are in the chat room, that these problems are somehow going to be resolved. So we need to pay a lot of attention to these vulnerable individuals, the vulnerable groups of the society, that they do not hide themselves in the virtual environment, but that we appoint them to in-person counseling experts. They are extremely vulnerable for online abuse, sexual exploitation online that Mr. Tekavac mentioned before me. The counseling through e-channels is important to make contact, to make this first sharing of their problems, but then it is really important that we, the experts, tell them to find real help, in-person help, where they can really tackle, resolve their issues and find solutions. And this week, for the same purpose, we started our own campaign, how to use the internet safely, securely, to raise awareness amongst young people, how to combat, fight their issues. They tell us that they recognize that they were contacted by somebody who's blackmailing them, who are hidden, but they cannot cut this connection. They feel ashamed, they feel fear, guilt, and the focus of our campaign is to cut the harmful communication and tell somebody about stop it, and then tell somebody about harmful communication online. You can tell your parent, an adult, a teacher, counseling service at a school. It is important to stop, to cut such communication. According to our experience, because the young people don't cut such communication, they are only spiraling down this harmful flow of events, course of events, and things are getting worse. Ms. Anna Fak has presented this brochure. It is also can be found. It was published on our website. You can print it out if necessary. And we want to say to the young people and the children, stop the communication. Horrible things cannot happen to you online. There's enough experts who are there live for you to help your problems. This is the end of my lecture, and I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you, Maša. We heard horrible statistics, things we would prefer not to know about. We would prefer to hear more encouraging data, but the reality is as it is. We cannot turn a blind eye to these issues. The epidemic has left a deep imprint on all of us, not just the children and young people. We mentioned the vulnerability of the children that has increased because of the pandemic. They have faced severe distress, crisis. Thank you very much for your work, for what you do, that you help the children, that you talk to them, that you counsel them. And I'm very happy that the programs such as yours exist so that we can reach those children, young people in crisis. The fact remains that the perpetrators are aware of this. They manipulate the children accordingly. They know of the vulnerability of the children, and that makes them even easier targets for the perpetrators. They blackmail children with sexual materials, videos, photographs, and such distress, such crisis of the children are only deepened and worsened. I can only hope that such programs remain and are even spread, expanded. Do you know of any common joint initiatives from the side of the experts dealing in the field of counseling, working with young people to prepare programs of assistance, to prepare a national strategy, perhaps, to tackle such horrifying problems, because we cannot expect this will just disappear. Yes, actually, there is a national strategy of mental health. We are part of this strategy. We collaborate with other authorities, with NGOs, experts, everybody is stressing that these issues need to be tackled, handled systemically, not only on the first level. So during the epidemic, there were groups of experts formed to address such issues for this purpose alone, but they are still the subject, and things are moving forward. In Slovenia, we collaborate with the centers for mental health of young people. Nationally, we will have more centers in the field, and everybody is aware that we need to increase the number of experts and increase the number of programs. I'm very happy to hear that, and I hope that such initiatives will be put in practice and help our most vulnerable groups of the society. These are our children. Ms. Maša Blaznik, thank you very much for your contribution. You have presented very important information and data. Everybody needs to be aware of them. And also the decision makers need to know such data and statistics to be able to form further programs and national strategies. Thank you very much.